Late last summer, when we were researching and writing Plan B 3.0, there were a number of stories. There was a number of stories on ice melting. One of them I remember was on Arctic sea ice. The report said that an area of Arctic sea ice, twice the size of Britain, had disappeared in a single week. Scientists were dumbfounded by this. They didn't think the Arctic sea ice could melt so fast. And then a few weeks later, in early September, there was a report from a science team, a team of researchers looking at the Greenland ice sheet. And they were focusing particularly on one of the glacial outflows from the Greenland ice sheet called the Ilulissat Glacier. It must be an Inuit term, Ilulissat. Most glaciers that I know about at least flow maybe 100 or 200 meters per year. The Ilulissat Glacier, 3 miles wide, a mile high, was flowing at 2 meters an hour. Again, scientists had never even imagined that anything like this was possible. And apparently the accelerated ice melting on the surface was seeping down and lubricating the flow of the glacier on the land. So we had this huge chunk of ice, 3 miles wide, a mile high, flowing at 2 meters an hour. So periodically, a chunk would break off and slide into the ocean. These chunks of ice weighed billions of tons, huge. And when they broke off, they would actually create a seismic response because of the sudden release of pressure on the land. Again, we'd never seen anything like this before. And then there's the West Antarctic ice sheet. The Arctic ice sheet is huge, and most of it's on the continent of Antarctica, except for the western part, which is supported on a series of scattering of islands. So scientists are concerned about it in particular because both warming air temperatures causing melting on the surface and warming water temperatures creating melting underneath could lead to a rather rapid breakup of the West Antarctic ice sheet. If the Greenland ice sheet goes entirely, and that won't happen overnight, and if it goes entirely, sea level rises 23 feet. If the West Antarctic ice sheet goes, sea level rises 16 feet. That's a total of 39 feet. Anything approaching that would inundate many of the world's coastal cities, either entirely or at least partly. A study done on a 30-foot rise in sea level reported that it would displace 600 million people. It would also, incidentally, inundate all the rice-growing river deltas and floodplains in Asia. Scientists from China were reporting on the melting of glaciers in China. They had just finished a 25-year study inventorying and measuring the changes in the glaciers in western China, many of them on the Tibetan Qinghai Plateau. And what they reported was, not only had the glaciers been melting for at least a few decades now, but the melting was accelerating. In some places, they were melting at 7% per year. In India, the Gangotri Glacier, huge glacier in the western Himalayas, which is the ice melt from which is the principal source of water that keeps the Ganges flowing during the dry season. If that glacier goes, and the scientists are now saying it could be gone in a matter of several decades, the Ganges could become a seasonal river. And I've tried to imagine what the Gangetic Basin would look like with the Ganges being dry for part of the year. And I can't sort of run that through. But what we're looking at in Asia, in the melting of the glaciers in the Himalayas and in the Tibetan Qinghai Plateau, these are the glaciers that feed the Ganges and the Indus, the Yellow River, the Yangtze River. What we're looking at is the most massive threat to food security, the most massive projected threat to food security that we've ever seen. Because these are the rivers that irrigate the wheat and rice fields of Asia. And I would remind you that the world's leading leading wheat producers are China #1, India #2, the US #3. With rice, China and India are in a class by themselves. There is no close third. What happens to the wheat and rice harvest in those two countries affects every one of us.